What up, everybody? Malevolent Being here. Just going through some VCV Rack stuff. I was actually working with a friend earlier today who's kind of new to Rack, and he made the comment to me that he was surprised that I was able to put out so many patches and just get so much like sound design work done. He felt like I was coming up with a lot of samples, and he mentioned to me that during his patching, what he kind of ends up doing is he patches to a certain point and then feels like it kind of sounds less than prime, and so he kind of deletes everything and then starts over. There's really nothing wrong with that per se. It's a great way of getting really familiar with a lot of modules and just getting a workflow down. So it's really good practice to go through and just kind of burn through a bunch of nothing patches really quick. But when we're talking about like sound design and getting work done and just making useful samples, there's quite a bit you can actually do with a not so great sounding patch to make it sound completely different, really, and a lot of it just comes down to resampling. So we'll kind of hop into it here, and we'll break down this patch, and I'll show you a few tricks, see how we can kind of transform the sound into something different, and maybe something a little bit more useful. I also just wanted to mention real quick, we're going to be talking quite a bit about a plugin called Ribs here in a second, but this video is not a video about the Ribs plugin. Rather, this is just an example of why you shouldn't be scared to just experiment with random plugins, and you should just get really into making weird sounds, resampling them, and then making more weird sounds out of your resamples, so on and so forth. So before we hop in, I just want to remind you guys to head down below and like and subscribe. Helps us grow the channel. It's free, takes almost none of your time, and makes me happy. So yeah, I'd appreciate that. Let's hop into it. So we have our patch here. We'll just play it. It's just a little percussive patch that I made. Nothing special, nothing real great, being completely honest. So just some percussion loops. We're using Moograph by Vowie. And just sequencing some like real sharp, transient, plucky hats kind of stuff. Again, it's nothing really special. I wouldn't really use this standalone in my music personally. I don't see where I would use it. But yeah, just some like small, short. So yeah, again, nothing special here. To make use of this, again, like I said, I wouldn't really use this in my music as it is now. It just wouldn't serve like a whole lot of functionality for the stuff that I'm making. But I didn't want to throw this away because I did spend some time on it, and I think there were some cool sounds that we could get out of it. So just jumping out of Rack and right in to live here. If you come to our channel, there are a few things that I did right off the bat. The first thing I started playing with was just distortion and some dynamics processing. So I ran it through like FabFilter Saturn and did some like sinusoidal folding and whatnot, just trying to dial in the sound. But I think the real magic that came out of this to start was throwing a drum bus on it. So we'll just engage the drum bus here. This is a pretty aggressive drum bus here. We have the compression mode enabled, as short of a transient as we can get, hard clipping it, crunching it up pretty hard, right? And then from there, I just kind of started playing with throwing different like sound mangling plugins on just this channel to start. So like we'll throw on some equalization, balance out some frequencies here. And then, maybe some Saturn, which with this, I was pretty aggressive with the Saturn patch, so. But that certainly changes the sound. It's still not something I would necessarily consider useful. So at this point, what I did was add a snare into the mix. And then I threw it into a bus here, and this is really where the sound started to change. So we hit it with another drum bus to really bring out some thump to it. And And then I split the frequencies so I could process the high and low frequencies separately here. This is just an audio effect rack that I made with some EQs on it that just literally split the frequency in half. Has a crossover knob you can adjust. But then before we enable this, on the low end, I just have a limiter like slamming out the bass. And then on the high end, I have a frequency echo to kind of get some stereo width on the top end. And now we're getting somewhere with this. So at this point with this kind of sound design, this might be something that I actually resample and bounce out. I took this a step further with this patch actually, because again, I'm not really working on anything that would utilize this specific loop here for much. But this does sound much better than the original patch. So the next thing I thought about doing was how do we make it grungier? How do we make it more useful, etc.? And that is, you know, just kind of comes down to what you're going to be doing with your music, right? For me, yeah, I knew I wouldn't be doing a whole lot at 110 BPM with sounds like this, at least. I might use something this crunchy for like some industrial techno or something hard. So I started thinking like how would I bring out some new harmonics and different dynamics in it to make it more interesting as like a loop for, let's say, industrial techno. Or maybe dubstep or, you know, whatever genre you might be looking at. In this instance, I figured I could add a glitch plugin to kind of start adding some variance that randomly pops in through the sound. Which is getting somewhere, but it's still just a little much for my uses, right? And we're still down at 110 BPM right now. I have this plugin called Ribs, which is sort of like a reel-to-reel tape emulation thing, almost. I'm not exactly sure how to describe it. I don't fully understand how this plugin works, to be honest with you. I'm still learning it, and once I understand it a little bit better, I will be making some videos on it, because it can come up with some pretty crazy sounds, as you'll see here in a second. So we're running our glitched, heavily processed signal into Ribs right now. We'll just turn it on here. This might sound crazy at the start until it starts looping, so bear with me. So it just kind of grabs a random buffer. You can change buffer length, all that jazz, whatnot, and now it's just looping through it. The real magic of this plugin comes with modulating the play rate, really. So we'll drop the play rate in half to start. Immediately starts grooving way harder. What happens if we take it down another notch? Should be 4 times slower. Totally different sound, once again. Could still be useful. I'm going to go back up to this speed here. We won't mess with the other controls in the plugin right now because it's not super critical for what we're doing. What we will do is rewrite the buffer, and what'll happen is it'll rewrite it at different parts in the track and then slow it back down to like what we're hearing now, and so you'll get a completely different groove out of it. All right, that's enough playing around with this for right now. So I already bounced out a couple passes of me just, rewriting the buffer and ribs and playing with some various features inside of that to get some different textures. This first one here is kind of like a weird two-steppy, dubsteppy type beat using those, what do we call them, like textures in the background to kind of add just some interest to it. So the sample that I recorded is just, and you'll see I cut the low end off here. So it fits better with the beat in context of the full beat that I made for it. So there's one way you might use this type of sound design. Again, it's all just very resample heavy, make changes, add weird plugins, resample it, rinse and repeat. Here's that same sound in context of like a techno track, right? So again, just this sound. But in a techno beat. So just to reiterate, we started with this sound up here, which again, it's whatever. It's a modular patch. It's not real great. Like I didn't spend hours and hours dialing in the sound on it or anything. It's frankly a sound I wouldn't find super useful just by itself. But just a little bit of creativity, not being afraid of just throwing random plugins onto a chain and then resampling everything, just making tons of passes at resamples, you end up with some pretty cool sounding stuff if you ask me. So anyway, yeah, try that out. There'll be a link down to Ribs in the description below if you guys want to pick that up and play it. Again, I'll have some videos coming out on that soon once I understand it a little bit better. If this video was helpful to you, please consider liking and subscribing. And again, let me know down in the comments what you guys think. And yeah, thanks for joining me and have a good one, guys.